All right, and we'll see it go live here in a second. So I'll wait for that. That is good. Starting Stream Health here. I always wait just a few seconds so it catches up a little bit. But it's actually recording and there's 4 seconds of liveness here. Look at that. It's still only yellow. Anyways. All right, we are live. I'm here with Jay from Learn Linux TV. And
hey, how's it going, everybody?
Yeah. So the question comes up all the time, of can you make a video about this? Can you make a video about this? I would love to make a video about that, but I'm also just me. And there's another YouTuber next to me who will make a video about at least some of the other things that you've been requesting. Quick side note before we get really started, we'll wait a few people to show up here. Cadmium Networks, so you're going to see more videos from about their equipment because we have some stuff we're going to be doing here with Cadmium Networks. And we got a whole bunch of awesome stuff from them. So I'll just give them a mention real quick. But yeah, hey, hi. It's got at least one person. So we got one person already on there.
All right, we got about 12.
12, wow.
Already up to 12.
Already up to 12.
This is great.
Yeah, here they come. So hello from Germany and everything else. Awesome. Cool. All right. So we're going to be doing a bunch of videos on this, which means it's going to be not harder, but of course more time constraining for me to get to some of the other Linux videos you want. And I know everyone's been asked about a Proxmox video, and he's done at least 1 or 2 Proxmox videos. So I figured I'd do some Q&A and see what all you want and how much Jay will do. And I'll give you a quick background before, I don't mean to cut you off.
No
a quick background. This guy didn't just write like a book on Linux. He wrote more than one. So he's in... Four books on Linux.
Yep.
He is where he's also co-host of the Sunday Morning Linux Review. So this is right after the Sunday Morning Linux Review recording. And yeah, I pick his brain all the time. I know some of you guys go, hey, you know a lot about Linux time. No, I know who to ask.
Yeah, I pick his brain about firewall stuff, and networking things. So I learn from him and we pass knowledge back and forth and everything like that. I guess we probably should have been collaborating a long time ago. We're just kind of late to get started on it, but we've been collaborating for a period of time, so it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no one person that can know everything. This is such a multifaceted market, and through the market of ideas and collaboration is how we get better. That's why I want to collaborate with more YouTubers. I'm lucky enough that Jay lives about, half hour, 45 minutes from here?
Yeah, about 30 minutes away.
Yeah, he's relatively close.
It's funny, like I released a video where I've been recording some videos right here on my channel because I didn't invest any real money into my channel yet, and he's got all the equipment, and he's got a studio. It's actually quiet here. And one of the first comments I got was, hey, do you work for Tom? Because that background looks familiar. I'm like, no, but we live close, so, we collaborate.
Yeah, so that's what today is, kind of introduce you. For those of you that didn't already subscribe to Jay's channel, feel free to subscribe to Jay's channel.
Yep, learnlinux.tv.
Yep, because it has a website attached to it because it's all about learning about Linux.
Yep. Let's see what we have in the comments here. Greetings from Mars. What's the weather like in Mars? I heard it's about negative 250 Fahrenheit last I checked, but that depends on exactly where it is in its rotation. That's cold.
Yeah, it's really cold there. How cold is it in Finland right now? We got a Finland. I seen someone who's actually already watched your Ubuntu Servo tutorial. They said that was some great learning. That's awesome.
Awesome. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. That was a lot of fun to create that series. I did too. I did an Essentials series. And then I did an administration guide because a lot of my viewers wanted more advanced things because I went over the essentials and, that's great for beginners, but if you're not a beginner, then there's the admin guide. So that was a lot of fun to make too. And I did a different spin on that one with what we had an emphasis on cloud hosting and actually making internet-facing solutions. So it's a different method, but I thought it turned out pretty well. So thanks for watching.
Actually, what I'm going to do, I just updated the description. There's a link to Jay's, it's in the title too, but I also made sure it's in the description as well. There's a link to learnlinux.tv. So you can
and Casey says, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to look, is what I always say. I agree. That's the thing. I wrote books on this subject, but I don't know everything. I mean, it's kind of funny. Sometimes I'll learn something and later forget it, and I'll consult my own book to remember how to do something. And you just have to know where to look, just know how to get the information. Man pages in Linux is a great way. Of course, Google, I'm always Googling things. So yeah, definitely. The human brain can only go through so much.
Yeah.
So much memory. So
yeah, there's so much on there. And he's I told him he should probably dive more into Proxmox because I can't do an XCP-NG video at all without someone bringing up Proxmox. And I just don't have myself a use case, but he does. He uses containers, and he also knows a lot more about containers than I do.
I have a Proxmox video right now. The view count on it isn't that large, and I don't think it's representative of what the audience is looking for. I'm just not that good at tagging, and he's teaching me some things about that, so maybe that'll creep back up in the search results here pretty soon. So I do have a video where I go over like more of an overview and installation. So if there's any specific topics on Proxmox that I should go over, then I would be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, so we're looking for some suggestions on Proxmox, and he wants to know, Justin would like to know if you've done a ZFS video with Arch.
I haven't. That's a good one. I haven't used ZFS on Linux yet, with one exception. I did temporarily run that as a storage pool on LexD, but that was quite a while ago. So not as of yet. I think Tom is more of an expert on ZFS than I am. So if we were to do something like that, it would probably be more of a collaboration video. We'd probably both have to be on that one.
Yeah, I'm good with ZFS. I've not used ZFS on Linux, and it kind of comes down to use case because I don't really build Linux servers that need that extensive ZFS. Actually, the opposite is going to be true once we get some more testing done. I plan to build, because the use case is, can you run the UniFi video server on a FreeNAS directly as opposed to running FreeNAS as a storage server? Yes, I think so. I'm doing testing on that. I know people have gotten it to work, but I want to see if it can work in production, not kind of hacked together. Like it's a repeatable, it's not troubled to have updates with. So we want to be able to run a VM that runs UniFi video and then shares with inside that ZFS as a storage. That way we can sell you one nice fancy box to run the whole thing.
And Justin mentions, he means specifically installing ZFS as the root. And
Ooh.
yeah, that I haven't done yet. So that's definitely very interesting. I always try to get some time during the week to do some kind of experiment where I just try something I've never tried before just for the sake of trying it. That's basically how you learn. And this week it's been time shift. So maybe when I come off of that, I'll figure out what my next thing will be. And ZFS is very interesting to me because I feel like it's probably the best file system in the Unix-like OS space, but there's nothing native in Linux yet that I think quite compares to it. So it makes perfect sense why somebody would want to run it as their root. I think ButterFS is like the file system that is a showrunner, but there's some issues with that, and there's some quality standards, or at least there were. So ZFS is definitely an exciting topic, so it might be something that I'll consider in the future for sure.
Yeah, Ken Pryor wants to know, he said he switched from Windows 10 to 1804. Welcome to the Linux world, Ken. And what antivirus do you recommend? Is it necessary at all? Here's the thing.
Yeah.
No is the short answer. The long answer is if you pull from known repositories, it is safe. Like, as long as you're not pulling code from weird places and downloading weird programs, the advantage of the repositories are they're vetted, they're secured. So as long as you're pulling from standard repositories, or even if you don't have a need for anything external, you generally speaking are safe because you're not downloading a lot of files.
My opinion on antivirus is not going to be a popular one. I'll warn you guys. I don't feel you should run antivirus on anything, Windows included. I don't think any OS install you should ever run antivirus, and here's why. Symantec in a recent article mentioned they themselves declared antivirus as dead. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. I don't remember when that article came out, but at the end of the day, whether or not you get a virus or malicious software on your computer depends solely on the actions that you take on that computer, whether or not you stay up to date on security updates, and just being careful not doing anything silly like clicking on a link in an email or installing something like Tom mentioned from an unknown source. Antivirus software takes performance away from you. I mean, it takes a certain percentage of the performance from your computer. And I just don't feel like that's a benefit. The most important thing to focus on is, number one, backups. Back up your files in 3 different places. 3 different places, 2 of which being off-site, or 1 of which being off-site, and 2 different mediums. So it's like they call it the 3-2-1 backup rule.
Yeah, 3-2-1 backup rule.
So you have not only backups, but you have a way to recover. So basically, focus on taking an image of your machine is a good way. So if you do get hosed with a virus, you should never try to clean it. You just erase your machine, install the known good image, and then restore the files on top of that. So I would tell a Windows user the same thing, a Mac user the same thing, and a Linux user the same thing. So to answer the question more directly, ClamAV is if you really want to run antivirus, is the go-to for Linux anyway. There is a graphical component to it that you can install. It's not just command line. I haven't really run it much, so I don't have advanced knowledge on that, but if you do feel like you really want to run antivirus, then ClamAV would be the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's still the only engine that I've officially seen supported. Now, years ago, and they may still have something out there. Sophos, I used to pay for the Sophos antivirus back when this mattered more than it does now. I used to administer mail servers starting in the 90s. That's where my Linux, original Linux stuff came from. And what I did was we used Sophos to like inspect and grab things because email file attachments were all the rage in around 2001 for how people got infected with viruses. They didn't have websites you could download viruses, but they would email you one. So we used tools like that. So Sophos may still have some type of scanning. And there's use cases like if you have to inspect a bunch of files that are being downloaded, and I bring that up because some of the firewalls, that's one of their things is being able to inspect files as they're being downloaded at the firewall level, because a lot of you have asked about UTMs. And if you install an SSL cert, that will enable the UTM to do a file level inspection of what your users are downloading. It's one more way to help try to keep things out based on a signature. But back to the overall problem of firewalls, though, being signature based, don't worry, there's still plenty of old viruses out there, but for the most part, it only protects you from the old viruses. The new guys keep getting more and more clever.
And we have someone asking, can you recommend a backup software or script to use, Linux in general, Proxmox specific as well? I'm a big fan of B2. I think it's a great solution from Backblaze. That's off-site. So I generally only consider it true backup if it's off-site. I see a lot of people will just plug in a hard drive to their computer. Hey, I'm backed up. No, you're not. If you have an electrical surge or something that takes out your computer, it might take out that hard drive too. B2 is really good, and that in and of itself is just a backup service. It's not actually how you get your files up there. There's rclone, which is what I've used. And what rclone allows you to do is basically run a script, an rclone script, and it just puts the data up there in B2. B2 is really cheap. I find it, as far as the ones I looked at, to be the cheapest of all the cloud backup providers, so that's what I go with. On Proxmox, what I do is I have FreeNAS with a storage volume on there where Proxmox will back up the VM or snapshots or what have you. They're actually stored on this NFS mount, and FreeNAS, what it does is it actually takes the snapshots from the NFS mount and puts those in B2 as well. So B2 is backup for my servers, my laptops, as well as my Proxmox VMs in addition to that. So basically I pretty much use the same thing, but FreeNAS has a built-in method that it actually cloud syncs. It's actually called Cloud Sync, and it basically puts the data up there. So I rely on that from the FreeNAS perspective, but even then you could just use rclone, and that's a good way to go too. And rclone is pretty easy to set up, actually.
And I believe that's the back end for FreeNAS for some other stuff is rclone.
It might be.
They have an rclone option. They have also, the way the protocols are implemented, and if you roll back to my interview I did with the dev team at FreeNAS a few months back, I break down how all those protocols work a little bit more in depth. Well, they do, not me. They're the ones that wrote them all. Someone said, would you recommend Debian Edition over Ubuntu build? Also, why Mint such a pain for remote desktop? Any tips for that? I upgraded to kernel 4.9 and broke remote desktop.
So I think specifically what Mark is mentioning is the comparing Debian Edition versus the Ubuntu base main version of Mint, because Mint is based on Ubuntu 18.04. And Debian Edition, I don't recommend that. It's not bad. It's just you're going to have a higher level of knowledge. I'm not sure what your level of knowledge is. It kind of depends on that. And if I'm not mistaken, the Debian Edition of Mint is actually based on Debian Stable now, which is great from a stability standpoint, but Debian has really terrible hardware support for laptops and desktops, whereas Ubuntu has the best hardware support for laptops and desktops when you compare apples to apples. So I actually think the Ubuntu base is more so the way to go. It's more heavily supported. The Debian edition of Mint exists solely so that the developers of Mint, if they one day decide to abandon Ubuntu or one day they can't use Ubuntu, they want to have a place to land that they can then take it and make it the main edition in a pinch if they need to. So they maintain the Debian edition as kind of like a fail-safe. So it doesn't really get the same attention to detail that the developers put into the Ubuntu build. That and the better hardware quality or support, I would prefer the Ubuntu base. So hope I'm understanding the question properly. And as far as remote desktop, I'm curious if you mean accessing remote desktops from Mint or connecting to Mint via remote desktop, or which direction you're going on that one. I'm not quite sure.
And I'll drop I've seen someone ask the question about, do they have enough RAM for ZFS? Kind of someone posted a general rule is 1 terabyte of storage, a gigabyte of RAM, but this doesn't scale necessarily. It's because some people have petabytes of storage, but they can't have that much. Well, they don't necessarily need that much RAM. Just so you know, ZFS, once you get over, let's say, 32 or 64 gigs, there's an amount of diminishing return. It all becomes used for the adaptive read caching, ARC, the ARC. The ARC just fills up as much RAM as it can use. But for an example, we have 32 gigs in our server for our FreeNAS box, but it doesn't really use that RAM until a long time it's been on. It's based on how many file reads it thinks it can cache. So if you never hit that many files over time, or we have a client who hardly fills up his ARC at all because they use it for long-term storage of archival footage of video that they have to do because they do civil engineering. I've talked about the company before. They do civil engineering videos. So once again, they don't have a ton of RAM in it, and it doesn't really affect them because it's not like they're having hundreds of users that need to have ready access to that file or the same files. And if your users are hitting randomly different files all the time, the ARC cache fills up less. Now, also within the ARC cache is going to be the ZFS table of all the data of where the data is. So that is also inside of there. So you at least need enough RAM based on how big that table is. But once you start saying I have 64 gigs or more RAM, you can actually get the storage more than that rule. Because the base OS itself is going to need, I think the base OS needs 8 gigs a minimum to even function for all the core functions of ZFS. Everything after that starts going to ARC. And of course, add more RAM if you have VMs or jails that need larger memory allocations.
So so clarifying the remote desktop, I recommend looking into X2Go because I feel, at least when I looked at it a couple of years ago, so it's been a little while, I found that it's the highest performance remote desktop you're going to get on a Linux machine. So it's X2Go, X2Go. And I've used it with great success, and it was amazing. The speed was great, everything was great. It doesn't seem to get talked about much anymore. I'm not really sure why. Again, I haven't looked at it in a couple of years. I just did a quick search, and it seems to still exist. Last release was just 3 months ago. So I would take a look at X2Go and see if maybe that solves your needs for the remote desktop. It's probably the best way you're going to get on Linux, I think.
Yeah, I've played with it briefly. I want to play with it again because I have some use cases for it. Because I don't really want remote access to my own desktop. When it's off, it's locked. My laptop's off, it's locked. And I have all my tools on there. And I think probably the reason there's also not a push for it is Jay has a write-up he just sent me today, on how he uses Ansible so you can have, like Jay will blow away his machine, and how long from the time you reload the OS does it take you to have it set back up?
No, I don't know, because what I do is I just go play my Nintendo Switch or something, and then I come back and check on it. Hey, it's done. But basically what he's referring to is on my channel, I'm often just blowing away my computers constantly, and I have to keep trying distributions. And I need a quick way to kind of get back to, okay, where was I with the distribution I had? So what I do is I have an Ansible config, and it runs in Ansible pull mode, which basically means that there's no server. It's just running a get pull and pulling down the Ansible config and running it localhost. But what it does is it installs all my packages. It installs GNOME, and it sets up all my keyboard shortcuts, GTK theme, icons, wallpaper, SSH config, NTP config, dot files, Vim, tmux, bashrc. Literally, pretty much my entire setup is replicated by Ansible, and all I got to do is run apt install Ansible and then apt pull the URL, done. And there's nothing else to do. So that's just something I've done. I actually wrote an article at opensource.com, and there's a 3-part series there where I actually talk about the method how I do it. A low level, I don't go over all of those things, but basically I don't want to set up my computer every single time I wipe it, install another distro, and then put my main distro back on it again. I want that automated, so it takes the work away from me. And that to me just makes it very efficient. But I also use the same method on my servers too. So I'm setting up a new server. I have scripts for that effectively do the same thing, but with no user interface. I can literally get a Ubuntu minimal install, which is like a 50 or 60 megabyte ISO image that installs just the command line, and then run my Ansible script, reboot, and I have GDM, and I log into GNOME, just like that. So it just basically sets up everything. So
Yeah, and because a lot of us do things like that, like I have my list of packages in a file, I can just say apt get install string, install all these packages, and it just grabs them all. So I don't care if I have to reload my computer. I back up my data that I create with Linux, but my Linux itself, I never really about backing up. Another question it rolled by real quick was, why is CentOS so popular in the corporate IT environment?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I have never been able to explain that. Now, I'm not a fan of CentOS. I don't hate it though. I respect it. So I don't want to like insult it. But I know it might sound biased, but I really do feel like Ubuntu and Debian offer the best platform for servers. Now, CentOS, I think it's popular because it's based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which has a lot of corporations are of the mindset that they're not very trustworthy. They have these very strict controls, maybe it's government requirements or just business requirements, where they might only trust something that's backed by a big known company. And if it's not, then they might not trust it. So since they trust Red Hat, maybe that kind of perpetuates and they, by extension, trust CentOS. I find CentOS to be more stale. The packages are always older than even Debian stable, which is saying a lot actually. And it just doesn't seem to offer as good of hardware support as Debian. Actually, Ubuntu, there again, this hardware support's better. I just think it's a better experience. And then Canonical, they do a lot of great things with LXD and Ubuntu Make and all these other things that they bolt on top of Debian. CentOS is a very good, stable platform, so I don't want to just insult it and say it's horrible. It's not. It's great. And because at the end of the day, you want a stable server. But that's just a theory on why it's more popular. I'm not actually sure if it's because it's based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but I seem to think that probably does play a part in that.
Yeah, the licensing is definitely like a part of it because, like he said, there's corporate companies go, well, we get sued for using free software on the internet. And you got to remember, there's a bunch of suit and ties sitting around a table with, especially if you talk about Fortune 500 companies with a publicly traded board of directors, blah, blah, blah. They don't care what you save them. The licensing fees are frequently the least expensive as licensing as can be from the perspective of trying to get started in the IT world, to businesses that have a bunch of employees or a CEO who's got a compensation package of $20 million a year, spending $250,000 licensing for something that runs their company is just $250,000 licensing. It's not, and it's usually, they're not, unless they're in a software business, the parts and tools and buildings they own are far exceed all the licensing costs, so it's just a part of the bottom line. So they have to think about, well, how do they protect these assets? The other thing I've seen just a lot of CentOS, last thing I'll have on this topic, is CentOS was always big in the hosting market forever. And because they always had, like, here's the install instructions for CentOS, where so you ended up with this environments, all these hosting companies from the very get-go. And I'm talking like the earliest days of CentOS. Almost every hosting environment with WHM, cPanel, like for web hosting, was always CentOS. And all the tutorials I got books on were for CentOS in the early days. If you want to set it up, no one had an instruction for another one. So that kind of came down to, well, the instruction says use this. I don't feel like trying to adopt my operating system that I prefer to it, so I'm going to prefer the operating system that runs it. And it becomes that. And My Playhouse had mentioned, I think different distributions are bad for Linux because it can be confusing which ones to use. Yes and no. I feel as though there's really only two distributions.
Yeah.
There's the Red Hat based ones, so you're either in the RHEL world or you're in the Debian world. Everyone has an offshoot and a flavor, but for the most part, I run pure Debian because it's out of habit, or a lot of people do like the Ubuntu distributions. They are nice. And the same thing, you either go with CentOS or you go, I'm an enterprise company and want to pay for the support and agreements, and you get the same environment, but the paid licensing Red Hats, very similar environment.
I think that there's some truth to it, to that though. It is actually frustrating. It's kind of funny. The very fact that there's so many distributions almost changed my entire future, because at the very beginning, when I was in college and I was looking into these operating systems, I was fascinating, and I was first just getting my feet wet in IT. I heard about this Linux thing, and I wanted to check it out. So one day, like, oh no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna check it out. And I look on some website, I don't remember which one it was, and I see all these distributions. I'm like, I have no idea which one I should use. And then I didn't use it. I just, you know what, I can't, I don't have time to just research all these distributions. I'm just gonna move on to something else. And I just put it aside. And what happened at that college is I took a class on Unix, and then someone walked in the door and they're like, hey, we're doing a pilot class on Linux. If anybody's interested, join. That was the moment that changed my life, because that teacher started my entire career, started an obsession, started an addiction. And they used Red Hat in that class back when Red Hat had a desktop distro. And then at that point, that's created my entire career. But if it wasn't for that moment, the fact that there were so many distributions almost made me just get fed up and just quit. But that being said, I don't think it's really a problem, and I know it's easy for me to say now that I know so much about it. If you look at DistroWatch, there's so many distributions there. But the question is, how many of them actually matter? And when I say matter, a lot of them are specialist distributions. So you'll see Tails. Right now on their news page, they just had a new release. But Tails is for a very specific kind of person.
Yeah.
You'll see Gparted. That's a
very
tool.
specific use case.
That's a very specific use case. Clonezilla. If you take out all the distros that are targeting a very specific niche, then the list of distributions is down to
only a few.
Debian, Ubuntu, Fedora, CentOS, and even then you can lump them into.
In Pop! OS, one of the things I like, someone asked about Pop! OS, because yes, I still run it. Why do I run Pop! OS instead of Ubuntu? Well, that's the thing. Pop! OS, I love Ubuntu, so I'll answer two questions at the same time. Someone asked which Linux distro for getting started and learning some of the terminal stuff. I really like Ubuntu on my laptop, because when you base things on Ubuntu, this laptop out of the box works beautifully with Ubuntu. Yep. The nice thing is Pop! OS is really Ubuntu, but they go, you know what, Ubuntu, I thought your fonts were ugly. So it's a minor change to Ubuntu. So it's not like I'm having to learn anything different. Any command that works in Ubuntu works in Pop! OS, because they didn't underlying change the OS. They facelifted it a little bit. And I personally enjoy their facelift. This is actually what makes Linux so popular to me, is I can customize it, or find someone who customizes it in a way that fits me a little better with the look. Without compromising any functionality at all. Maybe the menus are a little bit slightly different because you're not used to the way that is, but for the most part, it's like GNOME. It's very much like Ubuntu's plain GNOME. And the second question someone said about getting started, first one, load Linux, never dual boot. You won't learn things. Because what happens if you dual boot, because you want to know about getting started with command lines and things like that. If you dual boot, you'll keep booting into Windows every time you run into a problem, because it's easy. If you had to blow away your operating system and reload it every time because it's not easy, you wouldn't switch back to Windows. You'll stick at it. Second, loading tools, which are free, like VirtualBox. I've got an entire tutorial on using VirtualBox. It's super easy. It's free. It's a great thing, not really for the enterprise market, but I want to run a VM on my machine that's really small. 512 megs RAM will get you, or even 256 will boot up current Debian. I think it's a minimum you can start it with. So you can just start learning how the commands work and learning how to start and stop services, and follow along with Jay's book and go through and test it.
A couple of things I want to get caught up on the list here. So really quickly, Vincent mentions Pop! Is Debian. It's actually Ubuntu. I mean, by extension, you could argue it's Debian, because it's maybe that's what you meant. It's actually Ubuntu. And real quick, it's more than just System 76 wanting to do a different theme. The reason, so some people want to know, why do we have Pop! OS, which is GNOME, Ubuntu, which is GNOME, on the same identical base? Why do we need two GNOME distributions that are essentially virtually the same? And the reason is, it's more than just like icons and wallpaper and theme. When Ubuntu or Canonical decided they weren't going to develop Unity anymore, a lot of people don't realize they gave up on desktop Linux. Now you might be thinking, well, what do you mean they gave up? They have an actual desktop distribution. Well, yeah, but it's a community distribution with a very small team working on it. And they only produce it because they want to give developers something to use to develop on Windows Server, or Ubuntu Server, which is where the developers, they want the developers to use the same stack on their laptop and their server, but they're not vested in Desktop Linux. They gave that up, gave it to a very small team as a community effort. But with System 76, the Desktop Linux is their business. It's how they, by selling laptops and desktops, they can't bank their business on Ubuntu's desktop distribution, because what if Ubuntu decides, well, we're not even doing that anymore, and then System 76, they don't even have an OS anymore. So they developed Pop! OS to be their product because they're passionate about the desktop. They want to make something that they feel is going to be a better experience for their users, but
Right.
also everybody. So they're vested in the Desktop Linux, and the success of Desktop Linux depends on what they're doing in the types of things that they actually provide. So I think it's a very good project to where, as big of a fan of Ubuntu as I am, I'll steer people to Pop! OS every time. I think they take everything that makes Ubuntu good and they just take it to a whole new level. And a couple other things here. Let's see, what else do we have?
I left the link to the channel. My Playhouse, if you want to geek out about hardware, I seen him commenting in here. Definitely a wonderful channel. It's great channel for learning and geeking out about hardware.
So it looks like Basil says, 2 awesome texts. Thank you for your videos. Jay, I enjoy your books. Well written. Keep doing what you're doing and educate and help us to learn open source. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love the fact that my books are helping people. It's an amazing experience. And I think the best experience I've ever had so far was actually at PenguinCon the year before last. I had somebody approach me and they're like, I just want to tell you, like, I was bussing tables, but then I read your book, or watched your videos, and now I'm working web posting. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I just never thought something I'm doing could actually change somebody's life. So the feeling of giving back to the community is great to me, because it just makes me feel like, knowledge is eternal, so share it, right? I know there's a lot of people that will, knowledge is power, I'm going to withhold it because it's job security. No, it's not. Get your knowledge out there, because if something happens to you, then that knowledge is completely gone, and then it's useless. And it's a great feeling. So
I'm actually surprised. Mark Ewell just commented here that he sees not a lot of younger students interested in Linux, which kind of surprises me. We've seen a lot of people that seem to be interested in Linux.
That's not consistent with what I'm seeing in the industry, at least in my neck of the woods or my circle, the companies I've worked at, who I see coming to the conventions.
But you know what, though? There's probably something that I'm wrong about. The fact that they're in school. I will admit, some of the people I know that are just really, really good in Linux, they just simply lack a formal education. So maybe that is Linux people aren't necessarily. I've met some people who are just incredible, like Linux savants at things. They dropped out of high school. They do very well, and so they just had a passion for it. I have a friend who's a programmer, for example. He could not even show up to college. Like, he failed his way out of college and everything else, but he currently makes about $150K a year as a coder. He just knows how to do it. He's a really good programmer. He just doesn't do good in school. He's wrote video games. He's wrote all kinds of fun stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, but I think you may be right. I think, and I don't know, I'm not poo-pooing school, but I do know that sometimes school can be difficult for people who are nonconformists like myself, because I did not go to school, and I had a very hard time in school. Not just because I was young and with attitude, but it just wasn't mine. But I started working in tech in 1994, the same year I'm supposed to be graduating high school. I got a job working in tech. I've been working in this industry that long. So my learning is not from any type of structured. I never went to college or anything like that. It just doesn't work for me. I did a talk about that. And
Mine is self-taught too. I do have a degree. I have a master's degree actually, but for me, did I really need it? I'm not exactly sure. I'm glad to have it, happy to have it, but I don't really feel as though it's necessary for most people. What I recommend is look at the type of job you want to do, and look up actual job requests. Even if you're not currently looking for a job, look at the job boards and see what level of education do these typically prefer for the job you want. What skills are they asking for? So if you decide, hey, I want to go to school, then what you do is you look at the actual requirements for the job and make sure that the college you're going to teaches those things. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. You want to align your education with your career goals. And what you might find is that none of the colleges teach what you need, but maybe some trade school might, but just make the decision based on your goal. Another thing I want to respond to is Mikhail, I hope I'm saying their name right, is asking, saying that Ubuntu 18.04 is supported in Hyper-V, but after a week or so of being on for 24/7, it bogs down to an unusable level until it's restarted. And he wants to know if, and either of us have experienced this. I have never or almost never used Hyper-V, so unfortunately I don't know. But what I would want to know is some more metrics. So for example, while the problem is happening, run IOTop, HTOP, and some other tools to find out where the actual bottleneck is. And then based on where the bottleneck is, maybe it'd be memory storage, maybe there's a memory leak or something with the disks isn't responding quick enough. You'll at least be able to pinpoint what part of Hyper-V is the problem. And then from there, you can narrow it down. Because it's really hard to say, especially considering I haven't used Hyper-V other than maybe a couple of times 8 years ago or 5 or 6 years ago or something. So
And anything we have with
Yeah.
Hyper-V is not running Linux, so I have no.
Yeah.
I never have like a Linux VM running in Hyper-V. Because usually what they do is you build a base of Hyper-V and then you'll build your application servers inside of Hyper-V, which are more Windows servers. So yeah. Related is, yes. Oh, My Playhouse, lots of Lenovo videos. Someone asked about a good laptop. I love the System 76 laptops if you're looking for something used and less expensive. These Lenovo ThinkPad, like the X series ThinkPads, the business ones, most of them are fairly Linux compatible. Specifically, my X250 works
Yep.
wonderful with Linux. This is a few-year-old laptop. You can find these for pretty cheap.
I love ThinkPads.
They just
I
make
know
a nice
here I am
keyboard.
with a System 76 computer. I like System 76 because they're vested in Linux, and I like to support a company that is all about Linux. And this is great hardware. This is the Galago Pro, very sturdy. I will admit though, I have to put Lenovo one notch higher than System 76 in terms of build quality. The keyboard is better, screen is slightly better. So I do love ThinkPads, especially the T series. I love those, the Carbons as well. The Galago is great. This machine is great, but I think we have two of the best manufacturers right here in front of us right now.
Yeah, these are very Linux compatible. Certifications. So, do you have any Linux certs?
I have 9.
Okay.
I have 9 certifications.
So he's way more qualified than me. I have 0.
So,
I don't know how to answer the question.
so what was the question?
The question
where was
is,
that?
are they worth it? And first, I'll tell you from my own perspective. As a business owner, I don't require them because people, when I go and pitch a proposal that I'm going to get something done, they want to know if I can get the job accomplished. They rarely ask about certifications because they're not aware of them. If you're trying to get a job, certifications are a gatekeeping method for HR. It doesn't necessarily as much as they're good or bad. They can be decent to have. I mean, they can teach you some knowledge, don't get me wrong. But sometimes they're a gatekeeping method because HR has to check a box. What are these person's qualifications? Because we need someone who knows something. How do we know they know a thing? I can't just say I need a bachelor's degree. No,
Right.
I need a guy who can fix this SQL server running Apache. So they look for people certified in a specific area
Right.
because that does help them. It's just a way to narrow down piles of resumes that get thrown at them because hiring is a very, very
It
difficult
is.
process.
And the one thing about hiring managers to understand is that they are all, I shouldn't say all, but the majority of them are extremely biased to the point where you could have a PhD in computer science and go to a hiring manager, and then somebody with a bachelor's degree with the same experience as you ends up getting the job. Why? Because they just don't like the school you got your PhD from. And then that's the entire reason you didn't get the job. They won't admit it. They won't tell you that. But if they could have had a family member that went to a college and got a bad grade, and they hate that college, and they see you coming in with this, you're on honors, you got this PhD, you already lost the job as soon as you said you came from this university. In much the same way, you might have a hiring manager that thinks that college education is everything and they don't like certifications, or you have a hiring manager that's the complete opposite. So there is no rule of thumb, whereas certifications actually help you. And even though I have 9, I don't know exactly which ones actually helped me get any job that I had. So basically the rule of thumb is this, the machine gun approach. If you feel like a degree is helpful and the class list correlates to the skills for the job you want, then education is valuable regardless of whether the hiring manager wants you to do it. You look at the job ads, find out what they're asking for. Certifications, I didn't use it because I thought it was magically going to get me a job. I just used it as learning under pressure. So if I have a topic I want to learn, but I have no deadline, I'm going to procrastinate. But if I buy a certificate, a voucher that has an expiration date on it, and if I don't get that test done by the expiration date, I study like crazy, and I just use it as a personal thing. Like, I want to learn more about X, I'm going to try to get certified in it, not because I necessarily want a job. But the machine gun approach, the more things you come at a hiring manager with, the faster chance you're going to get a job. So if you come at them with a degree, certifications, some kind of portfolio with things in GitHub, and you have all these different elements, it just makes more of an impact on the hiring manager than someone who just has an education, just has certification. And, sometimes you'll have an unfair advantage, or somebody will have an unfair advantage over you. If I'm getting a job working on Linux servers, I wrote books on it, I have a YouTube channel, I have 9 certifications, I have 16 years experience. I'm sorry, but you might as well go home. It's not going to happen for you if I'm going for the job at the same time as you. But then if somebody comes at the same job and they've written 5 books, then they get the job. So, and again, the hiring managers are so biased, they'll never admit it. I literally knew somebody, and this is absolutely disgusting, tell me that they only hired people they found attractive. That is horrific. And
So-
it didn't even matter at that point
Yeah.
what their credentials were. Hiring managers can be totally horrific about these things.
And Google has, and there's actually a book on this exact topic. And Google, you can find this. Google documents and has their methodologies laid out for how they do hiring, and it's fascinating. What you think of the company, whatever, but Google has a blind system by which they're never interviewed. The people coming in are not even interviewed by the department they'll work in. They purposely anonymize all the data, right down to any personal details about the person, gets very anonymized and becomes a system of the test they give you, the cognitive tests, like they actually have coding tests and things like that they give you. So they have a very interesting hiring practice like this, but it becomes, they eliminate so much of the bias. My friend who does the coding job, maybe one time I'll have him on here or something. One of the things interesting was he was just kind of weirded out with the company he works for now, but they do very large programming. He comes in, they sit him down, his interview before they talk to him was he's sitting in a room of other people. I think he said there was 11 people, which he's like, I guess I'm competing against 11 people for the job. They said, no, we need 20. We can only find 11 of you to make it this far. And they basically sat down, no Google, no Stack Exchange. Here's the problem. Here's the code sets. Solve. Sit down. Some people just got up. They did not want to sit in front of a keyboard and start doing it. But some of these companies are getting a little bit more clever by literally putting your skills to the test. I do something similar, and I've seen James Biggs mention as a business owner, you hire on enthusiasm. That's important. But
I do the same thing. A lot of people may not know this. My day job is an IT director, literally. That's what I am. I'm not the IT director that doesn't actually
know what he's doing.
do the actual work the employees are doing. I'm just as into it as they are. But when I just hired somebody recently, and that's the thing. I don't care if you don't have every single bullet point, and I'll often hear people not apply to a job because they don't have every single thing on the list. Apply to it anyway. You might get the job because if you're passionate about it, I would hire you, and I have, because that's all. If you want to learn and you're passionate about it and you want to grow your skills, I don't care if you are missing 10 of the things on the list. If I feel like you're going to get those things and make it a priority, then yeah, I'd like to hire you. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that. Like I said, anything we could do to help get the bias out of the system, I think Google did a good job. And I love what Google's answer. Google had an answer when they let this person get access. They let someone write a book about their HR processes, and they gave them access. And Google says, we kind of believe in our process is making things better, and we'd like to see other companies follow it. We don't want to hold on to this as a secret. And I think all of us can sit here and agree. We've a lot of people, and I've only been employed a couple places, but we've all at least had some level of experience or with awful hiring people. So we're going to jump off that topic, but yeah, anytime we can eliminate the bias.
Yeah.
Search sometimes are a necessary evil. Go look for the job you're looking for and see if it might require search.
And don't take the search like I mentioned just because you think it's going to magically make your income great. Use it as a learning experience. Get a certification in something you want to learn that you know the least about. and use it as an excuse to deep dive into the subject and passionately learn it and know it well. And I think you'll find that that serves you better because that impacts your enthusiasm. And I think that comes through to the employer more so than the piece of paper would. So Basil mentioned or asked, any upcoming books? So no, not right now. I have a lot going on. Normally, it seems to always happen, I don't know what it is, about around Christmas time that I sign a contract and I begin the process. So here it is almost Christmas time and I don't actually have anything in the pipelines yet. I get very, very busy. So my day job is very busy. And then the YouTube channel, I do that. But I also am in karate as well, which I'm very passionate about that because it's a lot of fun. I'm getting closer and closer to black belt. So that the forms that you got to remember and the motions becomes very intricate. I think I will write a book again at some point, but right now I'm kind of in between books and I'm just enjoying focusing on my YouTube channel and martial arts, my kids, family, video games, just for a little bit. I go through these in-between phases where I'm vested in YouTube and then I'm on my book where I can't do YouTube and I kind of go back and forth. So I'll definitely keep posted on my YouTube channel. I'll probably do a video blog or something if I do sign a contract for something as soon as I get the permission to talk about it because, at some point if my publisher hasn't announced it yet, I don't want to announce it myself unless I have permission to do so, but which I don't even think they'd care, to be honest with you. But as of right now, nothing yet, but I'm looking forward to writing again because it's a lot of work, but after it's done, I kind of wish I was writing. It just, it's a lot of fun, the creativity that goes into it.
So,
But, yeah.
something you touched on real quick that I'll mention. Occasionally get out from behind the keyboard.
Yes.
Because I had plans to work on some heavy lifting today in terms of technical stuff. I was going to do a video out, and after the show, I'm kind of like, all right, we had a great discussion after the show. We did some talks about stuff, and I'm like, you want to do a live stream? Because this was not really planned, or you guys would have known about it ahead of time. But after this, I'm kind of to my technical end. I'm going to go chill out. It's actually about 40, which is warm for winter in Michigan.
Yeah.
I'm going to maybe play some video games. Maybe I'll go outside for a little while. I'm going to go for a walk out in the woods for at least part of my day will be spent doing it. Get out from behind the keyboard once in a while. You solve problems here. I have a couple things I have to figure out, and I was going to work on them, but sometimes that taking a break. I mean, he does the karate thing. Actually, I know a lot of tech people that do it. That's been interesting to me. I have a few other technical people that are really into, like, they're passionate about, well, they're not doing technical stuff.
When it comes to technology people, I'm not trying to generalize us, but it's often the case where we're very introverted because our nature of our work has us in closed doors working on, we're fingers at the keyboard. And karate, you get to do things you didn't think you were going to be able to do physically. Like I could literally do aerial spin kicks, for example. I never thought I'd be able to do that. But the one benefit I love the most is it forces me to come out of my shell and be more social with other people. And the organization I'm a part of, PKSA, we have locations all over the place. So it's like a family that every time we get together for tournaments, we just know each other. It's not uncommon for someone in our organization to have 1,000 friends on Facebook because there's just that many people that are into it. And it kind of helps you build more of a social circle, which, to be honest, if we're stuck fixing servers and being on call all the time, we may not have an option or much of a chance to really get out there and socialize. So that in and of itself can be very valuable. And a couple here. So where did I get the Ubuntu sticker? I don't remember. I think it was unixstickers.com if I'm not mistaken. So that's where mine came from.
I think a lot of these came from unixstickers.com that I have. And for those of you that have seen like my rack tour, when there's a ton of stickers on there, between going to events, I collect stickers at events if I go to a Linux event or speak at one. But Unix stickers, I know Tony ordered a bunch of them for all of us at the podcast. We had a big pile of them a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. Daniel's saying that his workplace is 100% Windows.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they're not really going along with them on, suggesting cheaper alternatives and things. I don't want to say leave the company, but I kind of want to do because I don't know. I mean, for all I know, I tell you to leave, and then you end up in a worse job, and then it's my fault. But what I do want to say is consider your options because I feel like an IT company, and I'm wearing my IT director hat right now. An IT company that is closed to alternatives is the IT company that will fail. Eventually, they will fail, they will have layoffs because their mindset is on one thing. And if that mindset or the track that they're on goes off, they're just going to be like deer caught in headlights and they're not going to know how to respond. So Microsoft right now is in a big state of change. Their entire business model is changing very rapidly. So dedicating your entire business to the Microsoft platform is a very risky and silly move to make. And I'm not even trying to make fun of Microsoft here, but I think everybody will agree that they're transitioning their business more towards services. And the OS and software part of it, yes, it's important, but it's less important than what Microsoft is actually tackling. So I actually left a company for this reason. And for me, it ended up being a very big thing because then my next job was Linux system administrator, and I actually worked at a company that was very open-minded, and it was very pleasant to work at. I think look at your options, because if they're not wanting to consider solutions and they're on one track, and it's a very unstable track to be, Microsoft is very unstable nowadays, I would just consider your options and make a decision that works best for you, and keep even if you stay at the company, keep learning Linux, because that's where everything is heading, and there's nothing no company can do about it. That's where, with the rise of DevOps and containerization, that's where it's going. So definitely keep your eyes on that, because that's where the money is, and that's where the companies are going.
Well, and it's the operating system. So, the discussion comes up in the MSP space all the time. Well, is everyone going to desktop as a service? Those are all Band-Aids. The way a lot of things are moving is web-enabled services. And it's still not the same. It's not equating it to saying, well, that's how we used to do with terminals and green screens and one central server. It's a lot more complicated than that. The reality is, there's not as much value in running the local operating system on a bunch of individual machines. This is the rise of the Chromebook and things like that. Everything can just live in the cloud, and then from moving from device to device, it's all one and the same. My data, I'll admit, I use G Suite for my business. It is nice to send an email from my phone, reply to a couple of emails on my phone, reply to the email I half drafted on my phone because I got tired of trying to use small keyboard. Finish drafting it here, hit send. I didn't have to sync anything. It's all in the cloud. It's all magical, so to speak. But that's where I see more and more things going, are web-enabled apps that don't have dependencies. And it's also a management problem. I have to load, let's say there's a new version of a piece of software. Well, let's say I have an office full of 10 people that all run that software. Now I got to update 10 computers. Or one web application server gets updated, and everyone always has the latest version. That's how we're seeing the market shift to. And the reality, orchestrating that type of connectivity, Microsoft knows you're not running this on IIS server. You're running this on Apache, Node.js, Nginx, MySQL. That's all the back end that runs all this magic. So this is why so much Linux support. It's actually not about price. Everyone thinks like, I tried to talk them into saving money with open source. And it's not about price at all. It's about what works. And Linux dominated from the earliest days of the Apache server, dominated the web market. Microsoft, before they realized they should be in the web market, Apache had already ate their lunch. And Linux had already had the foothold. And now that the internet, you're seeing the rise in Linux because the internet is shifting. The market, should speak, the tech market is shifting towards web-enabled applications. And Linux is going, we're already here. Microsoft's like, hurry up and get there. And they're realizing their product wasn't ready. But don't worry, it's got to be hosted somewhere. Microsoft has Azure. Their shift to Azure was to host it. They're getting into that side of the market. They're a tooling company. They want to make the development tools and sell you the development tools to write code. They want to host that end product you produced with all that code. They realize that's their future and money. But as long as someone will throw money at them for buying Microsoft Office and Microsoft Windows, they will continue to sell it. Why would you not? So as long as someone wants to buy something, even if you're like, I don't really feel like developing it, and I'm going to beta test on my users with updates, but they keep throwing money at me for it, so I'm going to keep...
Money is good.
Money is good, and a long tail of legacy. We have clients still running apps from the 90s because there's not a use case for them to upgrade. We have this is the scary part. We've got a laser cutting machine out of manufacturing running Windows 95.
I worked at a company that had a Windows 98 laptop that was running the software that was used to manage the door lock system. So one day our key fobs wouldn't let us into the building, and we were all stuck outside. We couldn't get in. And we eventually had to have a janitor come over, someone who actually had a physical key. They let us in, and then I had to fix a Windows 98 laptop and revive it just to get the door lock system to work again because they just didn't want to put any money in keeping it updated. I believe it was Vincent here, as I mentioned, running fully Linux would have the same issues, wouldn't it? To an extent, yes. I mean, Linux isn't owned by any one company, although, you could argue Red Hat has probably the biggest hold on it. But it's not even more so that. It's that any company that puts all of their attention on a single platform, and then that platform goes away or goes in a direction that's not compatible with that business, they will suffer, and there will be catastrophic issues that can happen on account of that. Cross-platform is key whenever possible. Nothing should be operating system specific anymore. Basically, you want your software, your products to be able to run wherever the user is, and being dedicated to one platform, depending on the nature of your business, can be a problem. Being fully Linux wouldn't be as much of a problem as being fully Microsoft, because Microsoft themselves owns the direction of Windows and where it goes, and their software and where it goes. Whereas in the open source world, if somebody hates how something's run, they'll fork it. And then it'll still exist, and it's a little bit more stable, I think.
Directly related to that forking problem, that just happened in one of the media player companies. They made an announcement that they're going to quit releasing their code.
That was, I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember the name of it. There's already
wasn't MB, was it?
Yeah, Hemby.
I think it
There's
was.
an open source version. It has a
Yeah.
different name. They forked it and said, "Hey, if you guys want to go proprietary, have at it." And this is the thing. That's why Linux. This is the reason source code is so important. It's not about Linux. It's really the fundamental of all this is about having available source code, so you can say, you know what, I don't like this company who's maintaining this source code is not a good steward of it, and that's why you go over to whichever repository they hold this code on. You fork the code and you start working with it somewhere else. And that's what just happened to MB.
Yep.
They went through that same thing. Someone already said it over here. Same thing happened to iOS Router. This is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
If the companies decide to go proprietary with something or change their business model around, this is why having source code is so important. And I have a recent little story about source code that drove me crazy. So I know it's not an open source product, but not everything I do is open source because it's not available to me. If I have to buy a tool, I buy a tool. And one of the tools we have is RStudio. I like it. It's great. If you could find an open source alternative to RStudio, yes, I would use it for data recovery. Here's the story. We updated our Linux instance that was running RStudio. And we bought RStudio, paid for it, licensed it properly 2 years ago. We had to buy a support contract with them because their license breaks when you update Linux. They know about the problem. They won't fix the problem unless you pay them for support to relicense the product I already bought. Good news is I have to buy the product again. Bad news is I really don't have a problem with the product. I don't need a support contract, but I had to buy one. It wasn't too expensive. It's like $50. So it's not the end of the world, but it's also a super annoying thing that I paid for software that I still don't own at all, even though it's a standalone program. It's different as paying for software as a service, such as my SolarWinds contract or whichever. That's an ongoing software as a service. Yeah. But I'm talking about when I actually bought a hardware that I'm not receiving updates for. I now have to pay the license, now pay them again that was annoying.
It's ransom. And Vincent brings up another good point. He's asking, or a good question, asking, as someone who owns an IT company, third one actually, he's asking, why does he keep hearing about people saying that Linux is about to take over, but it never does? It's happened a long time ago, and it's taken over. It's here. The issue, think about it in terms of this. Linux owns 70 or 80%, somewhere in between, of server market share. Dominates servers.
I would say more.
Probably more. That's just from one site that I got that one from. But basically, it's taken over servers. Internet of Things completely took over that. Laptops, at one point, Chrome OS, or not Chrome, Chrome OS was number one for a time. That's Linux-based. Android, Linux-based. That took over. Your TV's running Linux. Your set-top boxes are running Linux. The only thing that hasn't really taken over would be the Windows desktop, because I feel like desktops will probably go away before they get taken over by Linux, because the use case of the desktop is going to get less and less and less, because people are going to be able to game on their portable devices with cloud services and also GPU docks that actually allow you to connect a video card to your laptop. The use case of the desktop will go away, and that's really the last hold that non-Linux platforms actually have. Linux has taken over, and people often talk about, well, when is the year of the Linux desktop going to happen? And never, because again, the desktop is going away. So that it's in itself doesn't matter. But if you're talking about laptops and all these other devices, I mean, Linux has already taken over everything. And also, if you think about AWS, look at their footprint. That's mostly Linux on AWS. I mean, they have a bunch of other services that aren't Linux. They have infrastructure as code stuff. They have Lambda, serverless computing. But for the most part, most of what people run on AWS is Linux. Most of Azure, Microsoft's own platform, runs Linux. With the cloud, containerization, even containers have a Linux file system snapshot contained inside. So yeah, Linux has taken over quite a while ago. It's just some people may not have looked at it from that angle or really realized it just how it's taking over. Instead of just taking over directly, it's like Linux is surrounding the infrastructure and kind of just coming into it. And that's not the way that a lot of people expected it to happen, but it's definitely happened. It's taken over.
Yeah, it's you look at anything IoT based, it's going to run a Linux kernel. I mean, 99% of things, the rise of the Raspberry Pi and everything derivative off of that, all these little phones and things, everything's just got some type of Linux kernel in it.
Yep.
Because that's just what makes it practical to use these. Especially because Linux is super cross compiled. So grab that little, the little tiny one. Yep. So I believe, and someone's going to crucify me, I'll probably get it wrong. I believe they forked partially Vios, but this is all, I believe some of the Vios commands still work in these, but these little edge routers, they're running Linux on ARM to get this, and it's because there's support already for this. So it's not like it's like going to take over. You simply don't load Windows. I mean, I don't even think Microsoft's even really pushing Windows 10 device IoT thing anymore. Like, I know they're trying.
I know that I think it still exists, but I haven't heard about it.
I've not
in a
seen
while.
market penetration. There's also a Windows version, I think, for the Raspberry Pi or some of the board kits. I've seen nothing in the market for it. And I actually got to meet some of the developers at Microsoft for it, and there's a couple of guys enthusiastic about it.
Right.
And there's a PR team spinning it. I think that's the world it lives in. And something else that I seen that Vincent said, you live in California, Vince. You live in a reality distortion bubble. I'm just going to throw it out there. So California is not exactly normal, so you might be right. He said, is it just me living in the Bay Area? Yes, it could be.
Well, you're probably happier out there, actually, because I envy people that live in California and Florida. I mean, here we are, and it's cold, it's miserable, it's gray, I barely want to go outside half the time. So that distortion bubble is probably one I want to live in because it's probably warmer there, so it's probably good. But I know that's not anything that we're talking about. But he mentioned, Vincent mentioned, well, it's taken over, but it isn't visible. I think it's pretty visible. I mean, you have to define visible, right? I mean, most of the companies I've worked with, I can't even walk into a room without seeing 5 Linux laptops there at least. And the ones that aren't Linux are MacBooks. And then the Windows ones for the developers are just outnumbered by MacBooks and Linux, but I see at least 5 Linux laptops pretty much everywhere I go. So it also kind of depends on where you are as well, because if you live in an area that's Microsoft-centric or work for a company that's Microsoft-centric, of course you're not going to see Linux because they want the Windows platform. That's the platform that they chose. So you have to define visible, but I would argue that if Linux is so popular that you don't even notice it's there, I would actually take that more of as a sign of success than anything else, because if something stands out like a sore thumb, then clearly that's not really that successful. But if it just goes unnoticed, I would say it's integrating very well in the community and the industry. And I think being able to integrate well is why Linux is so popular, because Linux is like somebody just gives you a bunch of Legos. Build what you want. It don't matter. Just take these Legos, build it. And you're not going to know what brand of Legos they are, if they're actual Lego brand or Mega Bloks or something. I know it's a stupid idea. You're not going to care. You see the end result and you're like, oh, that's a great sculpture. You don't really care how it's made or what's underneath it, but you care about the underlying product.
And without, I have not even unboxed any of the cadmium stuff yet, but I've not dug into the technical I know how it works on the external, but the internals of it, I'm willing to bet there's a Linux kernel, at least on some of this cadmium stuff that's on the floor over here. So
yeah. What else do we have here?
Let's see what else.
Yeah,
Windows IoT, and it was really slow. Shocking.
Yeah, I haven't used it. Here's my opinion of Windows, and I'm trying not to be too negative, but this is just an opinion I have as a Linux user a long time. I actually had a situation recently where we did work on a Windows server, and it was on the cloud and it was running out of space. Someone decided that 30 gigabytes was enough for Drive C on a Windows server, and I mean, the update cache alone can easily claim that, as any Windows admin would know. But it got to the case where the volume was like 30 gigabytes. It was like full or nearly full. So I'm thinking, oh man, we don't have LVM or these auto-expanding hard drives. So I actually had one of my teammates work on this, and he's like, yeah, I can actually expand the file system. I'm like, when did Windows get that feature? Well, I mean, Linux has had this for a long time, and I'm just sitting here very shocked that we could resize the file system on Windows without actually shutting it down for the first time. And my most recent memory of Windows was, when that happens, you have to shut the server down, you have to clone the disk onto another volume that's larger, and then use some kind of tool to expand the C drive and then start the server up. But apparently, it's just a shock. Something as simple as that was more of a shock to me, basically.
And then someone commented, like, for the even the small, even middle enterprise markets, you're not going to see a ton of Linux servers in the back room. Right. And it's just because most of the Linux servers are running more so in the cloud. So anytime you see anything sold to a company as software as a service or some online service, you're going to see Linux running it. But in terms of the hardware running in there, with some exceptions, being that we're in the manufacturing space here, we still have clients that are today on the AS400 platforms. And hell, I got at least two. I got one left, I think, on RS6000. Old crap stuff there. I mean, it was solid back in the day. I used to be a Unix admin for AIX on an RS6000 series IBM. Wow. So in the manufacturing, because that was a popular solution, I seen that. And one of the very, very first tech jobs, bigger tech jobs I had was working for a company. We did Acer Alto. Acer and Alto were a company that built the servers back then. It was all Unix support. So there was some of that, but it was all related to manufacturing here in the Detroit area. So it did exist. But when you go to, let's say, professional service offices, legal firm, law firm, doctor's office, you just don't find Linux in their back rooms. Oddly, Brunswick, if you've heard of Brunswick, the bowling people that manage the bowling machines, they run a Linux server, a really cool one too. I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know because we just did a bowling alley, they have Brunswick's servers are all running Linux in the back. So novelty. It's all command driven, but I think they probably ported it from some Unix platform to Linux. I didn't catch which version of Linux was run because they put an interface on top of it. Not a GUI, just a command line driven interface, but it tracks all the bowling stats for the PBA. It's pretty cool. What else we got here? So we're going to wrap it up here in about under 10 minutes. Yep. We could go forever.
Yeah, and this is fun. This is actually the first live cast I've ever done. So this is a great experience so far. Thank you, everybody. This is awesome.
Get your questions in, Uncle Joe. We have 10 more minutes. Uncle Joe's Playhouse is a nice channel. He talks about some stuff that he's got going on, Windows and stuff. Let's see, Plex server, XE, whenever Debian doesn't get back to the network, mounted VMs including... your Debian server doesn't get back to the network? I don't understand why. I guess I need more details. Oh, the casinos still run AS400. We have no casinos as clients, so I didn't know that. AS400 is not dead. It's one of those long tail of legacy. It also is a not broke, don't fix it. My client is really going back and forth because his move from it's going to be almost $100,000, and in fees and servers and everything to run it all, his AS400 just works, and it's been a workhorse of their 30 or 40 years in business, and they've run this same platform, obviously not the same server for 30 years. Trust me, they couldn't get away with it. They like to not spend money sometimes on technology, but it's one of those, they know the system. It works really well. IBM has always treated them well. They have service contracts they renew every year. It's not, we do the rest of their network. We just don't touch the AS400.
So Angel asks, AWS versus DigitalOcean versus Azure versus Google for Cloud. Ooh. So I like this one, actually.
And before, because this person asked twice, let me answer it.
Sure.
I'll let you dive
into that. No worries, go right ahead.
OMV versus FreeNAS. Open Media Vault, I don't know if you've used it, but I've never used it.
I have, yeah.
Okay. I like FreeNAS, seems very complete. I kind of looked at Open Media Vault. It didn't feel as complete looking, and I didn't test it, though.
I didn't spend too much time in OMV, to be honest, so I can't really offer a detailed comparison between the two. For me, ZFS actually was the determining factor.
ZFS
So-
is just so, there's a reason enterprises use ZFS. It's a very, very solid, very dependable file system. Copy on write. Its runner up is going to be, the only other mainstream copy on write file system is ButterFS. Phoronix, hey, listen to the SMLR podcast. We talked a little bit about
we
it.
did talk a little bit about
Phoronix
that.
just did a good review comparing ButterFS versus FreeNAS running ZFS. There's some discussion they have in there, so I'm not going to get too far off topic, but you'll understand once again, ZFS is just a winner. And spoiler, don't read the article. ZFS wins.
You're gonna Tom, you're gonna laugh at this. So before going to FreeNAS, I had a Perl script running in a cron. And what it would do is do an MD5 sum of every single file in a volume and email me if an MD5 sum changed, so I know that there was some data corruption and I could go and restore the file. Not the best way to handle it, but then ZFS, naturally can handle that kind of thing. So for me, it was kind of like a no-brainer to go that direction. It's one less cron task I have to actually use. So the AWS, DigitalOcean, Azure, Google question. So it also depends on scale as well. AWS versus DigitalOcean isn't really a fair comparison because DigitalOcean is not for highly scaled workloads. Like AWS is more elastic. You have server demand that grows, the servers grow with the demand and then shrink back down. That's why they call it elastic, like elastic servers. But DigitalOcean can also be used in high scale as well, so you can still use them for the same case. But DigitalOcean is more so for more generic workloads. But DigitalOcean is actually trying to compete with AWS because we see them coming out with Kubernetes, which just recently hit public. So AWS is more so for the scaling. Azure, my usage of it seems like it's more of a standard VM or virtualization approach to cloud. So if you go in the interface for Azure, it looks more like an interface you would see. You'd be forgiven for thinking you were in VMware or Hyper-V. It calls VMs VMs. So it uses the same terminology that people in the industry are already used to hearing. So it's easier to understand for certain mindsets, but that approach with Azure is more, you can create servers that you actually care about and want to maintain and keep running, whereas with AWS, your servers are considered cattle. So they're created on demand when they're needed and destroyed when they're not. And you need to have a system in place in AWS to basically check for servers that are unhealthy, and they will go away. And I've seen this time and time again. You literally get an email in AWS. It'll say, the server's unhealthy, it's going to be deleted in 2 weeks, so figure it out. And they don't even help you. So you already have to have a system in place to deal with servers that are going away, because if their underlying hardware in AWS has a fault, they will mark all the VMs on that server, and you'll just have to figure that out. So there's a little bit more overhead you have to do with AWS than with Azure or with DigitalOcean. With Google Cloud, I can't really speak too much about that. I do know that Google Cloud, from what I've heard from people that I trust, say that Google Cloud has the best Kubernetes experience of all the platforms because that was developed at Google, so naturally are automatically going to have the best experience and the best integration there. So it really does depend on what your use case is, what your workload is, to really definitively answer which one's the best.
Yeah, there's so many little factors that can go into that. I might do some more videos about both Linode and DigitalOcean. I've been doing some testing. It kind of relates to the forum talk I had. I need to find a place to host my forums. My forums will exceed the bandwidth that I have physically inside the building here. So we're going to host them somewhere, and I got to pick a good hosting spot. I also have an Azure account, so it all depends on what we're doing.
Yep.
So lots of choices, but I might go with DigitalOcean on it. I played around with their system. I was playing with it yesterday, and I liked it a lot.
And Team Rampage says, I'm still waiting for today's SMLR episode, Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's because I'm doing this and not posting that.
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
We'll get it uploaded. Normally, it probably would have been up by now. But
It would.
we're here,
We're here.
let's record something.
Let's do this. It is right here. Right here is the SMLR
it's
podcast.
Right in there. It's inside that device.
We'll leave it right here.
Yeah, so you're looking at the episode.
Yes.
It'll be up. We'll get it uploaded very soon.
This Ubuntu sticker was put on here because we were on our way to the Microsoft event, and we go, we got to make sure that we know who they're talking to. So they were Linux people. We just happened to have that sticker before we showed up because we recorded all the podcasts at Microsoft.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's a good one to have.
Oh, fun stuff.
Unky Joe's Playhouse says, funny, I was just watching a Jay video before I got notified about this stream. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
There is a crossover of stuff like
A
that.
crossover of interest.
Yeah, you can host your Unify Cloud Key in DigitalOcean. Chris has done a couple of videos. Chris over at Crosslock Solutions has done a couple of videos on this. Yeah, DigitalOcean is not a bad platform at all, but it's not like it's so substantially superior to Linode. Linode seems really good.
They have better partitioning options with Linode, whereas DigitalOcean has no partitioning options at all. So you can literally say, I want 4 partitions, and I want them mounted here. DigitalOcean's like, here's an Ubuntu droplet. It's just slash. I mean, you could add additional volumes, but the integration of that is not good. But I still prefer the interface of DigitalOcean.
DigitalOcean's got a really nice interface.
Yep.
They seem. I think Linode updated their interface because I logged into my
When did this
Linode.
happen?
It seems like they did. Maybe a couple weeks. I've seen some announcement on it.
It's been about 4 or 5 months for me. So
Yeah, it's something a little bit more recent, but I don't leave many things just running in Linode. So I've spun them up for tests, so I can share the IP address of those machines, and I destroy them later, and they go away. I think that's about it. Is there any other last minute questions? Because I got to go post the SMLR podcast, as someone was quick to point out.
Called us out on it.
Yeah, we got called out on this. Running your own colo events, not a bad idea. Colos are not. There's a few of them around here.
I thought about doing that actually for some of my things. That'd be a good idea.
Colos are not. They're probably cheaper in California. There's probably more of them than there are here. I don't know.
I want to answer this one real quick. This is kind of funny. Nils G says, Jay, can't you do some Python videos or something? Here's the funny thing. I'm going to reveal something I never revealed before. I have done Python videos. I had about 8 of them recorded. I never uploaded them. They were done like 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. So I'm not putting them up now because they're going to be substantially lower quality than anything I have now. But I have actually thought about going back and revisiting that. I could just re-record them because I know what I said and I still have the notes. But they're kind of like the unknown videos. I never made it up on my channel. I'm hoping that there's a interest for that. I hope that others share your interest, and if so, it might actually be something I would consider. So that might happen.
Yeah. So there's definitely, and I don't do programming videos because I'm not good at it.
Yeah,
You want to actually learn, right?
Yeah, I'm a hobbyist programmer. I do it for fun. So I never held a job title as a developer, but I just have a fascination with code, and I choose not to be a software engineer specifically because I never wanted a boss to tell me what to code. I want the freedom to code whatever the heck I want. So I code a lot, but it's only because I have fun doing it, and I just don't want anyone to have control over what I do. So I get into Linux system administration because that's my number one passion, but I still have a lot of fun with programming as well. So you should see my book collection with programming is I have boxes of these things. So it's a passion for sure.
This is the new interface. I did confirm it was. It's called.
Oh, wow.
It's called cloud.inode.com.
That does look different than what I'm doing. So I don't think you could see the screen. But,
No, they can't. They can't. But I just wanted.
Yeah.
You guys could sign up for a Linode account.
It's very professional, and I still have some credit over there, so I might spin something up and check
And
it out.
if you would like a Linode account, we have if you look in our affiliate links down below, you go to the things we love, we have an affiliate link for Linode if you're interested in signing up.
And I have one for DigitalOcean if you want to compare the two. On most of my
he's got
videos
one.
nowadays, at least most of the recent ones,
He's
you
got
should
a
be able to find
DigitalOcean one.
there. So,
So now you can help both of us
you can
out.
help
Go
us
sign
both
up.
out. It could help me buy more server hardware to show you guys more stuff or review something for you. I don't know. Buy more video games. No, I'm kidding.
All right, we're going to wrap this up here. I left links. Obviously, it's titled LearnLinux.tv. You can learn more about Jay. You can learn where to buy his books. So if you want to get some of the different books he wrote on Ubuntu and Linux and do some dives in there, they're great reads. If you need to get started, he's got a ton of tutorials, which are also based on some of the same information you'll find in his books. So subscribe to his YouTube channel. Look for more stuff out there.
LearnLinux.tv.
LearnLinux.tv.
And if you want to see me play video games with my son, I just started a YouTube channel, CrossGenGaming.tv, which we only have a few videos, very unprofessional, but I actually recorded 3 videos here at this studio playing Sega Genesis and the PlayStation Classic. So if you're into gaming, retro gaming, completely separate channel, but it exists, and I'll be uploading more professional videos of us playing these games probably within the next few weeks. We actually have a Christmas episode a Christmas-themed episode where we play Streets of Rage. And if you're wondering what Streets of Rage has to do with Christmas, watch the video.
And someone asked about how much bandwidth is needed for the forums. I don't know. That's a hard one to answer and go up from there. So what I'm doing is I'm going to start either a Linode or a DigitalOcean droplet and go from there. That way see, the thing about putting it in here, when I run out of bandwidth, one, it'll impact my company unless I buy more bandwidth here, which is more challenging. My Comcast story about that, I want to scream. The recent incident.
Wait, Comcast makes you want to scream?
Yeah,
That
I know.
never happens.
Even with their commercial hosting
They're great.
stuff. So what I plan to do is you put it in the cloud. This is where the cloud gives you that flexibility. I know all the things we run here are not going to exceed the bandwidth. But let's say a forum, and my forum gets more and more popular, and I have currently 43,000 some odd subscribers, and if 10,000 of those people, 1/4 of them, decide to sign up for the forum and start posting everything, I could immediately have a bandwidth problem. If I start there in the DigitalOcean or Linode, and this is where you run anything in the cloud, scalability becomes a big factor, I go, oh, look, it's using this much bandwidth. I can make a business decision. Is it worth it to me to fund more bandwidth? I just turn the dial. That I can get as big as I want. If I wanted to crank it up to, 64 gigs RAM, I'm going to buy hardware. I just up my service, reboot the server on the newer server, going, hey, look, now it's got that much more speed than before. So that's why it's going to get put in the cloud to begin with. There is a good article, if you want to read it, on Serve the Home. They talk about how their forums got so big and so popular, they actually moved it all to a colo. And that saved them money. But they're talking about having $10,000 and $20,000 a month bills because their forums were drawing that much. Their forums are huge. Wow. So that's just to host their forums and a couple things they do. So it kind of depends. But of course, they do it and pay that money because they get their money back because they have a business model around it. I'm just starting some light forums to start, but I realize I gotta accept there's going to be some hosting fees on there, and we'll see, because I don't really want to create forums that are broken. So as long as I have a business model to sustain it, I will sustain the forums, but they're going to end up in one of those places.
And if there's interest on my channel, I might do the same thing. Depending on my available time, I might do a wiki, because we were talking about would there be a value in that. So I might do a wiki, I might do forums. I'm not exactly sure yet, so if there's interest in that, you could comment in any of my videos and let me know and what I should be doing or whatever helps you guys, because it's all about you. I just feel good giving back, so whatever you guys want to see, that's what I want to do. So.
And I've debated about the subreddit, because the problem with a subreddit, it's something that's still on my consideration list, is pointing it at a subreddit. I'm using Facebook for forums, and someone don't throw tomatoes. The nice thing about Facebook is, so I don't remember exactly, I got a decent, not a huge amount of people, but a lot of people commenting on my forums on Facebook. Here's the thing, I have had to do 0 spam removal, 0 spam posts, 0 removal of people. Facebook makes it so stupid easy. I kind of like that about them, but I hate it because I'm not on my own platform that I don't own. Reddit makes it really easy. More people like Reddit. You can sign up for an account without any real verification, so you have that anonymity some people would prefer to have, which I like that as a feature a lot. But the ban hammer has to come down constantly on people on Reddit, because they are much more open of a platform. That means every Yahoo that gets in there that wants to just go ranting about stuff, I then have to kind of police. So I have to kind of moderate the forums for that. So there becomes that. The other problem is I don't own the content. Reddit owns all the content that is put on their forums. So if Reddit makes a business change and go, we just don't like doing this or like that, I'm completely subject to them, just as I am Facebook, which is one of the reasons I really love to run my own open source forums. But then it comes back to the expenses we talked about. So these are the business decisions I'm wrestling with. And me and him were talking about it before the show. Like, I want to do it, but I know this becomes another thing I have to manage. And if I do manage it on my own server, DigitalOcean, guess who's responsible for every hack and security problem that comes with it?
Exactly. I've even had my own website down a day or two before I got into monitoring years ago, and I'm like, for the last few days, nobody was able to get to my website, and it's just one of those things I have to keep an eye on, so there's time investments.
Yeah. And if someone says, sharing a subreddit, for example, we could do that too, because it is about Linux, but then again, why don't we just post in our Linux? But yeah. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of decisions around it. I want to build community. Yeah. I want to be able to. I like to have a way that I can reach out to all of people, which is one of the advantages you have when you own the forums. I can pin something to the top. Here's the common questions for things. YouTube notifications can be random at best. So where do I post all the videos? I can post each video, and YouTube comments are difficult for me to reply to. But if I posted a video at the top of every forum, there becomes the whole replies underneath. Of course, I can do that on Reddit too.
Yeah.
I don't know. These are all. Let me know. I'm always interested in some of it. It's all kind of fun and interesting. Yeah, 110 a month for a 4U rack space with a 100 air conditioner. But then you have to deal with all the hardware side of it and maintain it. Not that hardware's super expensive. I know how to build the servers, but I'm still physically building it, maintaining it. And if the server goes down, who's driving to the data center while the forums are down?
Right. I have
Me-
an extra
me or
server.
one
I
of my
thought
staff.
about. I thought about. I have a server. I have no idea what to do with this server. It's just sitting around. Maybe I could throw it up in a colo and just have something available there. Might be worth doing.
Team Rampage, I will be doing. I have a series of MSP videos I'm going to be working on. We just have a lot of projects at end of year that are going to probably keep me from producing those videos until January. But yes, I'm going to make some changes to the company. We're going to make some announcements. It's all growth stuff, and it's going to include some more MSP training stuff coming out along with it. So, yep, we will definitely be covering that. Also, real
I'll
quick.
take it off your hands, Jay.
Yeah. Funny story, because I'll before I rant about the MSP stuff, people always ask, well, what about taking over from MSP takeover and evaluations from when you take over from the other IT guy? You just need that picture of house. Everybody lies.
Wow.
Never
that's-
trust. The reason
oh
you're
my
taking
gosh.
over IT is probably because they didn't document very well. Their documentation, maybe as a superficial guide to where maybe something is, but it's probably completely wrong, because most IT companies, the reason you're taking over is not because they were good. Jay knows that right now. He's doing cleanup work. He knows how things were documented. He also knows how things are, and he knows those are broken.
in marvelous ways as repair work. I'm going to get to the end of the project at some point.
Yeah, so just in general, whenever you do takeovers, you just can't trust the other guy. Do all the snooping yourself. And it's hard to do cookie cutter, and I'll do a rambling video about that, about doing IT takeovers, just in general, because it's always a fun, daunting process. You hope you never miss anything, but it is what it is. Yeah. Hey, the wiki. He's a wiki fan too. All right, awesome. Yeah, getting documentation from coworkers, that's the battle of IT in general. Anyways.
Yeah, that's always a fun time.
All right. Take care. We're going to cut the live stream. Just hit stop over there, Jay.
Alrighty.
He's learning how all this.
Thank you, guys. It's been nice meeting all of you. Thank you.
Oh, he'll probably do a live stream on here too sometime. Bye.